The building stood tall in the middle of the city, made of glass and steel, shining under the evening lights. Inside, everything looked perfect. The floors were polished, the walls were clean, and soft music played through hidden speakers. Cameras were set up everywhere. Bright lights pointed toward a large stage where a long banner showed the company's logo. Tonight was not an ordinary night. It was a live broadcast watched by millions. The company was celebrating another successful year. The man at the center of it all stood confidently near the stage. He was a billionaire CEO, famous for building an empire from nothing, or at least that was the story often told. He loved being seen. He loved applause. He loved moments where people looked at him with admiration. Tonight, he planned to enjoy every second. Employees filled the hall. Some wore suits, others wore simple uniforms. Executives sat in the front rows, smiling and nodding at each other. Workers from different departments stood at the back, careful not to draw attention. Everyone knew this event was important, not just because it was live, but because the CEO liked to surprise people. And surprises around powerful people were often uncomfortable. At the far end of the hall, near the side doors, a janitor slowly pushed a cleaning cart. He moved quietly, doing what he always did, wiping corners that others ignored, picking up small pieces of trash, making sure the place looked perfect. He wore a simple uniform. His shoes were worn, but clean. His face showed calm, not excitement or fear. He was there because it was his job, nothing more. He had been asked to stay late that night. Big events always meant extra cleaning. He didn't mind. He had worked many nights like this. He understood how these things went. People celebrated, made messes, and left. He cleaned up after them. That was the routine. As the countdown reached 0, the live broadcast began. Applause filled the hall. The CEO walked onto the stage, waving, smiling wide. The cameras loved him, and he knew it. He spoke about success, hard work, and vision. His words sounded powerful, but many had heard them before. Still, people clapped. Cameras moved across the crowd, capturing happy faces. Then the CEO paused. He looked around the room as if he had just thought of something clever. "You know," said with a smile, "this company isn't just about leaders and executives. It's about everyone." People leaned forward. Some smiled. Others felt nervous. The CEO's eyes scanned the hall and landed on the janitor near the door. The man pushing the cart didn't notice at first. He was focused on his work. But a few people turned their heads, and the attention slowly moved toward him. "You there?" the CEO said, pointing. "Yes, you. Come here." The janitor stopped. He looked up, surprised. He checked to see if the CEO was speaking to someone else, but the finger stayed pointed at him. A staff member gestured for him to move forward. The janitor hesitated for a second, then left his cart and walked toward the stage. The room grew quiet. Cameras followed him. Millions of viewers now saw him clearly. He walked steadily, not rushing, not dragging his feet. When he reached the stage, he stood a few steps away, hands by his sides. His posture was respectful. The CEO smiled wider. "Everyone. Let's appreciate the people who keep this place clean," he said. Some clapped. Others looked uncomfortable. The janitor nodded slightly. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He simply stood there. The CEO walked closer, holding a microphone. "Tell us," he said, "how long have you been working here?" The janitor answered calmly. "Several years?" The CEO nodded as if impressed. "And you enjoy it?" "It's honest work," the janitor said. A few people in the crowd shifted in their seats. The answer didn't sound small or weak. It sounded grounded. The CEO laughed lightly. "Honest work, of course. Someone has to do it, right?" A few nervous laughs followed. The janitor said nothing. He waited. The CEO turned to the camera. "This is what opportunity looks like," he said. "No matter where you start, you can still be part of something big." The words sounded kind, but the tone felt off. Some viewers felt it, some didn't. The CEO looked back at the janitor. "Did you ever imagine you'd be standing on a stage like this on live TV?" The janitor answered honestly, "I don't think about things like that." The CEO raised his eyebrows. "No big dreams?" "I focus on what's in front of me," the janitor replied. That answer made the CEO pause. It wasn't what he expected. He smiled again, but this time the smile looked tighter. "Well," he said, "not everyone is meant to run companies." The room grew quieter. Some people avoided eye contact. Others stared straight ahead. The janitor remained calm. His breathing was steady. His face showed no anger, no shame. The CEO continued, enjoying the attention. "Still, isn't it amazing? A man like me on this stage, and a man like you right beside me." The difference was clear in his voice. The janitor looked at him briefly, then looked toward the audience. He saw many faces. Some curious, some uncomfortable, some already looking down at their phones. He understood what was happening. This wasn't about appreciation. It was about power. It was about showing who stood where. The CEO placed a hand on the janitor's shoulder. The touch was light, but it felt heavy. "Give him a hand," the CEO said. Applause followed, louder than before, but it didn't feel warm. It felt forced. The janitor nodded once again. He did not bow. He did not shrink. As the applause faded, the CEO leaned toward the microphone, ready to say more. The janitor remained standing, silent, steady, unaware that this moment meant to make him small. It was only the beginning. The cameras kept rolling. The CEO took a step back and smiled broadly at the audience. His voice was loud and full of confidence, but there was a subtle edge to it, something sharp that made people shift in their seats. He had always enjoyed moments like this, moments when he could remind everyone of the hierarchy, moments when he could subtly assert his power. He thought he was in control. But he didn't notice the calm determination in the janitor's eyes. The janitor stood quietly on the stage, hands at his sides, listening to the CEO speak. He didn't look nervous. He didn't fidget. He simply observed, as if nothing the CEO could do would rattle him. That calmness caught the attention of a few people in the audience. Some of them whispered to each other quietly, just enough for others to notice. It was unusual. The janitor wasn't supposed to stand out. Yet here he was, steady and unshaken. The CEO leaned forward slightly and asked, "Have you ever thought about how far you could go if you worked harder? If you aimed higher?" His tone was a mix of challenge and mockery. It was meant to be a trap, a way to make the janitor feel small in front of millions watching. The janitor paused, considering his words carefully. "I focus on what I can do today," he said. His voice was calm, clear, and steady. "I try to do it well. That's enough for me." A few gasps came from the audience. Not because the words were shocking, but because of how confidently they were spoken. The janitor wasn't shrinking under pressure. He wasn't trying to please anyone. He was simply speaking the truth. The CEO laughed a little too loudly, trying to regain control of the moment. "Well, that's a humble approach," he said, waving his hand as if dismissing the janitor's point. "Some people dream big, and some people stay small." The audience laughed nervously, unsure if the CEO's comment was funny or cruel. Some employees looked uncomfortable, glancing at each other for reassurance. The janitor, however, didn't react. His face was calm, his eyes steady. He didn't flinch or lower his gaze. The CEO, sensing that his attempt to embarrass the janitor wasn't working as planned, decided to escalate. "Tell me," he said, pointing at the janitor, "do you ever feel like you're missing out on life? That maybe there's more you could be doing?" The janitor answered simply, "Life is what you make of it every day. I do what I can with what I have." The CEO's smile faltered for a split second. This was not the reaction he expected. He had prepared for nervous laughter, for embarrassment, for awkward silence, not for dignity and quiet confidence. The cameras caught that split second, and millions of viewers would later notice it too. He tried again, this time with a different tactic. "Everyone here sees you now. Don't you want more? Don't you want to be noticed? To be recognized?" The janitor tilted his head slightly, thinking, "Recognition is temporary. Respect is lasting." There was a silence in the room. People exchanged glances. The CEO's face tightened. His carefully rehearsed show of superiority was slipping. He waved a hand, trying to dismiss the moment. But the janitor's words lingered in the air. Stronger than the applause the CEO had tried to command. The CEO, now visibly irritated, decided to make it more personal. You see, this is a world where people rise by being smart, by taking risks. Do you think cleaning floors teaches you that? The janitor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked around the room, making eye contact with several audience members. Every job teaches something, he said finally. Even this one. Discipline, patience, attention to detail, skills that matter. A few executives shifted uncomfortably. Some people started nodding silently. The CEO could feel the balance of attention slipping away from him and toward the janitor. That was something he wasn't used to. He cleared his throat and tried to regain the spotlight. Well, he said, forcing a laugh, perhaps, but some of us aim higher. Some of us create empires. The janitor's gaze didn't waver. Empires aren't built by stepping on others. They're built by understanding people, by listening, by seeing value where others don't. The audience was silent now. A few people in the back pulled out their phones, recording. The live viewers could feel the tension, the shift in energy. The CEO tried to smile, but it looked tight and forced. He was losing control, and he could feel it. Interesting perspective, he said, voice a little sharper than before. Do you think people like you get opportunities to create empires? The janitor's answer was quiet, but firm. Opportunities exist for those who see them and are ready. Some of us prepare quietly, while others show off loudly. The CEO laughed again, this time less convincingly. The audience could feel the unease. The janitor wasn't just standing there. He was commanding attention without even trying. He wasn't being loud or arrogant. He was simply calm, present, and honest. The CEO tried to change tactics. He decided to make it about the crowd. Everyone here, look at him, he said, gesturing to the janitor. This is someone who represents hard work. Someone who doesn't aim high. Someone who keeps things clean while others make millions. Some audience members clapped, but it was polite, not heartfelt. Some others looked down, uneasy. They could feel the subtle injustice in the CEO's words. They could see the janitor's quiet dignity, the way he stood straight, the way he didn't shrink. The janitor finally spoke again, his voice carrying softly but clearly. People often think power is shown through money, through loud voices, through public praise. True power is in what you do quietly, consistently, and honestly. The CEO's face betrayed a flicker of frustration. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't planned for it. He cleared his throat and smiled again, this time a little strained. Well, aren't you clever? You have wisdom, I'll give you that. The janitor didn't smile, didn't respond to the flattery. He simply nodded slightly and waited. The audience could feel the tension building. Cameras moved to capture reactions. Some employees whispered among themselves. Some viewers at home leaned forward, hooked by the unexpected turn of events. The CEO realized he needed to act fast. He couldn't let this moment slip away from him completely. Tell us something, he said. What do you want in life? What are your dreams? The janitor thought for a moment. I want to do good in the work I do. I want to be respected for what I contribute, not for how loud I am or who notices me. That's enough. The CEO's jaw tightened. This wasn't the response he had hoped for. He had expected awe, fear, maybe gratitude for the attention. Instead, he got dignity, quiet confidence, and a subtle reminder that power isn't just in money or stage presence. For a moment, the room was still. The audience watched, captivated. Social media feeds would later light up with reactions to this moment. Debates about respect, humility, and unseen strength. The CEO tried to laugh it off, waving his hand toward the janitor. Well, you keep the floors clean, and I'll keep the empires, he said, his voice tight. The attempt at humor fell flat. The janitor didn't respond. He didn't need to. The truth was clear to everyone watching as the CEO moved to speak to the audience again. The janitor stood silently calm, composed and strong. His presence alone had shifted the energy in the room. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't tried to prove himself. He simply stood there, human and grounded, reminding everyone that dignity can't be bought, staged, or humiliated. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every subtle glance, every quiet moment. The audience, both in the room and watching at home, sensed that this was more than just a stage performance. Something had changed. The CEO's control over the moment was no longer absolute. The janitor, simply by being himself, had begun to turn the tables. The CEO's smile had faded. He could feel the weight of the room shifting, even if he didn't fully understand why. The audience wasn't cheering for him anymore. They were leaning in, waiting, watching the janitor with curiosity and a growing sense of respect. The janitor's calmness and quiet dignity made the CEO look smaller, even on a stage built for grandeur. For a moment, the CEO tried to regain control. He clapped his hands and said, "Well, you've certainly thought a lot about this." Very thoughtful. His tone was tight, trying to sound casual, but the audience noticed the edge in his voice. The janitor stayed silent, not giving the CEO the reaction he wanted. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to create tension. He looked at the crowd, then back at the CEO, and finally took a small step forward. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every detail: the worn shoes, the clean uniform, the hands folded in front. It was simple, but it made a statement. Then he spoke softly at first, but clear. "I've learned that people often judge others by what they see on the surface. But the real measure isn't in appearances. It's in actions, in honesty, in what you do when no one is watching." The audience grew silent. Some leaned closer in their seats, captivated. The live viewers at home held their breath. There was a weight to these words, a truth that couldn't be ignored. The CEO's eyes narrowed, realizing this wasn't going according to plan. He tried to interrupt. Yes, very noble, but let's be honest. Life is about winning, isn't it? About who gets the power and recognition." The janitor nodded, acknowledging the point, but his next words carried more than a response. They carried authority, grounded in quiet experience. Power without responsibility is dangerous. Recognition without respect is empty. I've seen it many times, up close, from the corners where most people don't look. The audience reacted subtly. A few people murmured, a few nodded, some whispered to their neighbors. The CEO cleared his throat, trying to regain the upper hand. He moved across the stage, gesturing toward the janitor. And yet, some people need to see what's visible. They need the spotlight, the applause, the big moments to feel they've succeeded. The janitor remained calm. He shifted slightly, standing tall. "I've learned that lasting value isn't about applause. It's about what you leave behind, the impact you make quietly, consistently. That's what lasts. That's what matters." The audience was captivated. Some executives whispered to each other, clearly impressed. Social media feeds began to buzz as viewers at home watched the interaction unfold in real time. Clips were being recorded, live reactions streamed, comments rolling in about the unexpected calm strength of a man in a janitor's uniform. The CEO's confident posture began to falter. He could feel the subtle shift, but he didn't know how to stop it. He tried to change direction, asking, "And what about opportunity? Don't you want to rise to take more than what's given to you?" The janitor's eyes held steady, and he answered, "Opportunities are everywhere, but not all of them are worth taking. Some opportunities compromise your integrity. Some test your values. I've learned to choose carefully. To act when the right moment comes, not when someone demands it." The crowd was fully engaged now. The CEO could see it. He tried to force a laugh, moving toward a camera. "Well, that's a clever way to put it. You've got philosophy and poetry all in one." But the janitor didn't answer the flattery. He didn't need to. The truth in his words had already spoken louder than the CEO's attempts at charm or humor. Then, quietly, almost as if sharing a secret with the world, the janitor added, "I've learned patience. I've learned observation. I've seen things that most people never notice. And sometimes watching quietly is how you understand the real story." The audience reacted. Some gasped lightly. The CEO's forced smile tightened. He realized the janitor wasn't just speaking about work. He was hinting at knowledge, insight, perhaps even secrets that only someone close to the foundation of the company could know. The janitor shifted his gaze back to the CEO, calm and steady. "I've been here a long time, longer than most think. I've seen how people act when no one is watching. I've seen the good, the bad, and the unnoticed. And I've learned that sometimes the quietest person on the floor has the most to offer." The words hung in the air. The CEO swallowed hard. He had come to humiliate, to display superiority. But now he realized the janitor was not just unshaken, he was subtly commanding the stage. Every eye was on him. Cameras captured the slight nods, the quiet strength, the way a man with no fanfare or loud voice could hold attention and earn respect in a way the CEO couldn't buy. The CEO tried to laugh it off. Well, that's inspiring. But tell me, don't you want more recognition? Don't you want to be acknowledged by the world for all this? Wisdom? The janitor's answer was simple, but it resonated through the room. Recognition fades. Respect endures. I've learned the difference. And I don't need the world to validate the choices I make quietly every day. The silence was heavy. The CEO looked at the janitor with something new. Uncertainty. The room had shifted. The energy had changed. The power of the moment was no longer with him. It was with the man he had intended to humiliate. People in the audience began to whisper, exchanging looks. Some employees felt inspired. Some executives were concerned. The CEO realized this wasn't just a stage performance anymore. Something deeper was happening. A lesson unexpected, unfolding in real. The janitor took a deep breath and continued. I've seen leaders who think success is measured in money or applause. I've seen people underestimate those they consider beneath them. I've learned that the most important contributions are often unseen, unnoticed, and undervalued. And sometimes, the people least expected are the ones who carry the truth quietly. The audience leaned in closer. The live viewers were captivated. The social media feeds were lighting up with comments about dignity, respect, and quiet strength. The CEO's control over the narrative was slipping, almost imperceptibly, but noticeably to anyone paying attention. The CEO tried a final attempt, a quick joke to lighten the mood. Well, perhaps someday you'll write a book about all this wisdom from cleaning floors, eh? The janitor's response was calm, even kind. Some lessons are better lived than written, and some truths are best understood by those who pay attention. The cameras captured the subtle tension, the CEO's frustration growing, the audience leaning in, captivated by a man who hadn't needed a script, a plan, or applause to command attention. For the first time, the CEO realized the moment was not about him. The lights, the stage, the audience, the cameras, all of it, had shifted. The janitor had quietly, steadily, and fully turned the spotlight into a mirror, reflecting something the CEO hadn't expected. Respect, dignity, and truth could not be bought, staged, or humiliated. They could only be earned quietly every day. The room remained quiet, but the energy had shifted completely. The CEO had lost the rhythm of his speech, and even the staff who had rehearsed the event noticed. Cameras were still rolling, capturing every detail. Millions of viewers were watching, but no one clapped anymore. The janitor had shifted the focus entirely, not with loud words or aggression, but through calmness and truth. The CEO tried to speak again. His words felt forced. Well, some people just like things to be simple, right? Not everyone can see the bigger picture. The janitor looked at him steadily, then toward the audience. Sometimes the bigger picture isn't what everyone wants to see, he said. Sometimes it's what people ignore that matters the most. Sometimes quiet observation shows more than shouting from the top ever could. The audience was captivated. Employees leaned forward. Viewers at home paused whatever they were doing. Even the CEO felt a chill run down his spine. He had never encountered someone who didn't react the way he expected. The janitor's calm presence and quiet authority were unlike anything he had faced. The janitor continued. I've seen the corners where people hide mistakes. I've seen people take credit for work they didn't do. I've watched decisions being made without understanding the impact on everyone else. And I've learned that those who think they control the story are not always in control at all. The words hit the CEO harder than any public criticism could. His smile disappeared. He tried to laugh, but it sounded hollow. The audience murmured softly, sensing the tension. The janitor, realizing the moment was growing, decided to reveal a little more. I've been part of this company longer than many of you realize. I've worked in every floor, every office, every department. I've learned the real story, the story that doesn't make it into speeches, into boardrooms, or onto television. And I've learned that sometimes the person you think is untouchable is not untouchable at all. The audience gasped. Cameras shifted focus to capture reactions. Executives exchanged worried glances. The CEO's hands tightened into fists. But he tried to mask his tension with a forced smile. Now, the janitor continued, his voice calm. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I didn't come here to humiliate. I came here to speak truth, to show that respect, integrity, and honesty matter more than appearances, more than applause, more than control. The CEO tried to regain control. And you think the world will listen to someone like you? A janitor, standing on a stage, talking about truth. The janitor's gaze didn't waver. The world listens to what it needs to hear, not always to who shouts the loudest. Sometimes the quietest voice is the one that carries the most weight. The audience remained silent, absorbing every word. A few executives were visibly uncomfortable. They knew that what the janitor was saying could not be ignored, even if the CEO tried to dismiss it. The cameras caught subtle nods from employees who had worked alongside him, people who had seen his dedication and integrity firsthand. The CEO's face turned pale. He could feel the room slipping away from him, but he couldn't stop it. Well, he said finally, trying to regain authority, let's not get carried away. This is a celebration, after all. Isn't that right? The janitor nodded politely. Celebration is fine, but it should not come at the cost of respect. And respect is something you cannot demand. It must be earned. And sometimes, the person you least expect teaches you the hardest lesson. The audience leaned forward, captivated. The live viewers were glued to their screens. Social media was buzzing, clips were being shared instantly, reactions rolling in. The CEO's attempt to humiliate the janitor had backfired completely. What was meant to be a moment of control had become a revelation. The janitor stepped closer to the center of the stage. I've seen things that most people overlook. I've noticed the small acts of kindness, the quiet contributions that keep everything running. I've observed mistakes, oversights, and moments of arrogance. And I've learned that the person who tries to humiliate often underestimates the strength of those they think are below them. The audience whispered softly. The CEO's face was tense. His usual confidence had faded. He realized that his reputation, built on control and public image, was being challenged in real time, not by conflict or aggression, but by integrity and calm observation. The janitor continued, I've also learned patience. I've learned that sometimes the right moment to act is not when others expect it. Sometimes the strongest move is not loud, not visible, but precise and quiet. And sometimes, when the time is right, everyone notices the truth at once. The cameras captured the subtle intensity in the janitor's eyes. The CEO could feel the audience's attention slipping away from him and focusing entirely on the janitor. He tried to interrupt, tried to laugh, tried to regain the narrative, but each attempt fell flat. The audience had already decided where their respect lay. Then, quietly, the janitor added, I did not come here to confront. I came here to show that dignity, patience, and integrity matter more than control, more than power, more than the spotlight. And sometimes those who are underestimated are the ones who hold the most truth. The room was silent. Even the CEO's voice faltered. The audience, employees, and viewers at home were captivated by this quiet, powerful message. The balance of power had shifted, not with anger, not with loud confrontation, but with calm confidence and truth. The janitor looked around the room one last time. I will continue my work as I always have. I will continue to observe, to contribute, and to act with integrity. And I hope that one day everyone here will understand that true strength is not in humiliation, but in respect, honesty, and quiet dedication. The audience erupted into applause. Not forced, not awkward, but genuine. People stood and clapped, recognizing not just his words, but the dignity and integrity behind them. The CEO remained silent, realizing that the moment had completely slipped from his control. He had intended to humiliate, but instead, he had been humbled. The janitor stepped back, nodded once politely, and returned to the side of the stage, where he had started. He didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He simply continued to stand quietly, calm, and composed, leaving the audience with a powerful lesson that dignity, respect, and truth are more powerful than any stage, any lights, or any show of control. The moment was over. But the impact would last far longer than anyone had anticipated. After the applause died down, the room felt different. There was a quiet tension, a sense that something important had just happened. People were still murmuring among themselves, sharing glances, nodding silently. The CEO stood on stage, his usual confidence shaken. He had tried to control the moment, to show superiority, but all he had managed was to reveal his own arrogance. The janitor, meanwhile, stood calmly to the side, composed, steady, quietly commanding respect. The event continued, but the atmosphere had changed. The CEO tried to continue his speech, but his words sounded hollow. The employees and audience members who had been cheering earlier were now listening, more intently to the janitor's presence than to the CEO's statements. Social media feeds exploded with clips of the exchange, praising the janitor's poise and wisdom. Comments poured in from viewers all over the world, calling him brave, dignified, and inspiring. Backstage, the executive team whispered in urgency. They realized that what had been planned as a routine corporate celebration had turned into a moment that exposed more than intended. The CEO had underestimated the quiet strength of someone he assumed was beneath him. His control over the narrative was gone, and he could feel it. The janitor's calm truth had resonated with everyone. After the live broadcast ended, the janitor quietly returned to his work. He didn't seek recognition or applause beyond the stage. He pushed his cart, checked the floors, and ensured that everything was in order. Yet the impact of his presence lingered. Employees who had watched the exchange on stage approached him quietly, thanking him for showing what true courage and dignity looked like. They were inspired not just by his words, but by his quiet confidence and steady character. The CEO, on the other hand, was left to face the consequences. In the following days, board meetings and discussions highlighted his misjudgment. Executives who had previously remained loyal began questioning his decisions. The CEO's reputation, built on dominance and public image, was challenged. His arrogance, his attempts to humiliate, and his lack of understanding of the people around him had become widely known. The janitor, however, became a symbol not because he sought fame, but because of the respect he earned naturally. Media outlets began covering the story not sensationally, but with emphasis on the lesson. Dignity and quiet strength cannot be bought, staged, or humiliated. His message spread across social media, in offices, and in homes. People talked about how he had stood firm, how he had remained respectful, and how he had shown that true power comes from integrity, patience, and understanding. In the weeks that followed, the CEO faced consequences he hadn't anticipated. Policies were reviewed, practices questioned, and leadership decisions reconsidered. The board recognized that leadership required more than wealth or control. It required empathy, respect, and the ability to recognize value in everyone, regardless of position. The CEO's image took a hit, and he was forced to reflect on his approach. It became clear that his attempt to humiliate had taught him a lesson he could no longer ignore. Meanwhile, the janitor continued his work, quietly contributing every day. He didn't seek titles or recognition. He kept doing his job with the same dedication he had always shown, but now people looked at him differently. They listened to him, respected him, and sought his advice. His life didn't change overnight, but the respect he had always deserved became visible. People realized that contribution and character mattered far more than titles or appearances. Eventually, CEO made a public acknowledgement of his mistakes. He admitted that he had underestimated the janitor, that he had failed to see the strength, intelligence, and integrity of the people around him. It was a rare moment of humility from someone who had rarely faced it publicly. The CEO's acknowledgement didn't erase the lesson, but it was a step toward understanding the importance of respect and recognizing the value of every individual. The janitor, when asked about the attention, remained humble. He spoke about integrity, patience, and the quiet work that often goes unnoticed. He emphasized that real respect is earned through consistent actions, not through public displays or attempts to dominate others. His words resonated with audiences far and wide, reinforcing the idea that true power lies in character, not appearances. The story of that evening, the exchange on live television, and the lessons learned became a benchmark for discussions about leadership, respect, and dignity in workplaces across the country. People shared it as an example of how humility, patience, and quiet strength can challenge arrogance, expose truths, and create lasting impact. The janitor became more than a man on a stage. He became a symbol of integrity and courage, showing that true influence comes from who you are, not from the position you hold. In the end, the CEO's empire remained, but the understanding of leadership changed. The janitor's example reminded everyone that greatness is not measured by wealth, appearances, or control, but by the respect you earn and the positive influence you have on the people around you. The event remained in public memory not as a moment of humiliation, but as a story of how quiet dignity and steadfast integrity can turn the tables, teach powerful lessons, and leave a lasting mark that no amount of arrogance or money can overshadow. After the events of that night, life inside the company changed in ways few expected. The janitor returned to his routine work, quietly going through the motions, cleaning floors, emptying trash bins, and keeping every corner spotless. But now, the way people looked at him was different. Employees who had once passed him without a second glance now greeted him with a nod or a smile. Some asked for his opinion on small matters, curious about the calm, observant man who had quietly appended a live broadcast. The janitor never acted differently. He didn't boast or seek attention. His behavior remained steady, respectful, and humble. The change was not in him, it was in how others saw his worth. The CEO, on the other hand, faced constant reminders of his misstep. Board members subtly referenced the incident in meetings, questioning decisions he had made without considering the perspectives of those who actually understood the company from the ground up. Executives who had once followed his lead without question now whispered among themselves, wondering if they had been overlooking talent and insight in their own teams. The CEO felt the shift acutely. His wealth remained intact. His title remained, but his influence, the thing he prized most, was quietly diminished. In the days and weeks that followed, the janitor became a source of informal guidance for employees. People would stop by his cleaning cart, asking questions about how he handled certain situations, how he stayed patient, how he observed things others missed. He answered simply, never condescendingly, never taking credit for insight. "I just pay attention," he would say. "I do my work well, and I listen. That's all." These small exchanges had a ripple effect. Teams became more collaborative. Managers began to notice details they had previously ignored. There was a renewed respect for the contributions of all employees, not just the high-ranking ones. The janitor's quiet influence spread throughout the company without him ever actively seeking recognition. His actions, his demeanor, and his wisdom became a model for others to follow. Meanwhile, the CEO tried to regain control of the narrative, giving speeches, making public statements, and attempting to show that he was still the authority. But the impact of the janitor's presence lingered. Staff members, employees, and even board members couldn't ignore the lesson of that night. Arrogance and attempts at humiliation could never replace respect and integrity. Every decision the CEO made was now scrutinized more closely. Every move was weighed against the memory of how he had tried to belittle someone who had quietly commanded the room. Social media continued to amplify the story. Clips from the live broadcast were shared widely, with viewers from around the world commenting on the janitor's wisdom and composure. People admired the way he had handled himself, how he had remained calm under pressure, and how he had turned a moment intended for humiliation into a lesson about dignity. The janitor became a symbol not because he sought fame, but because his actions naturally inspired it. Teachers shared the clips in classrooms, companies used them in leadership training, and ordinary people talked about them in conversations. Impressed by the quiet strength of someone so unassuming, in the company itself, small but meaningful changes took place. Policies were reviewed with more attention to fairness. Opportunities were opened to employees who had previously been overlooked. Recognition programs were redesigned to honor contributions from every level, not just those in positions of power. The janitor didn't ask for any of this, but his example had shifted the culture. Leadership learned, slowly but surely, that true value was not always visible from a corner office or a title. It could be found in patience, observation, and consistent. Honest Work, the CEO, for his part, eventually made a personal visit to the janitor, not publicly but privately. He admitted, without pomp, that he had misjudged him. "I underestimated you," he said quietly. The janitor nodded respectfully. "I just do my work," he replied simply. No gloating, no triumph. Just a quiet acknowledgement that truth and patience had their own power. After that, the relationship between them shifted. The CEO, humbled and private, began to listen more. He asked questions not to dominate, but to understand. The janitor continued his work as usual, offering insight when appropriate, never seeking attention or reward. His influence grew subtly, guiding decisions with wisdom rather than force, reminding everyone that respect and integrity were the most powerful tools in any organization. The story spread beyond the company. Journalists covered it as an example of humility, patience, and the unexpected strength of individuals, often overlooked. Leadership seminars discussed the incident, showing how even someone in a seemingly minor role could have a profound impact. People in offices, schools, and communities discussed the lesson. True power and influence often come quietly, through consistent effort, attention, and integrity. Over time, the company thrived in ways that were different from before. Employees felt more valued, more seen, and more respected. Teams collaborated more effectively, sharing credit and responsibility. The culture evolved from one where hierarchy and appearance dominated to one where contribution, character, and integrity were recognized and honored. The janitor, quietly at work in the background, had catalyzed a transformation. Even the CEO began to change. He learned that wealth and status could not replace respect and integrity. He learned to listen, to notice, and to value the perspectives of those around him. The memory of that night remained a constant reminder of the lesson. Attempts to humiliate or assert dominance might create temporary appearances of control. But real influence and lasting impact come from humility, understanding, and recognition of the worth in others. The janitor never sought praise. He never boasted about the live broadcast or the attention it brought. He simply continued to do his work with care, attention, and integrity. And in doing so, he became a living example of the power of quiet strength, the value of patience, and the lasting impact of human dignity. His story inspired countless people, teaching them that true leadership, true respect, and true influence come not from titles, money, or appearances, but from the way you act, the way you treat others, and the steady, consistent integrity you carry every day.